Welcome to Theorycraft. This is a live podcast where game developers and players engage in conversation. And it's nice to be back after like only a week. I was starting to get a little too used to that cadence of like long breaks, but we're on pace. We're sticking to new habits now. Let's kick it off by just sort of seeing where everybody's at. Chris, did you get up to anything fun over the past several days? Your Labor Day, what'd you do?
I just had friends over and cooked dinner, and so that was. I haven't had like a dinner party sort of thing in a while, and that was fun.
Yeah.
Gosh, what else did I do? Teriyaki beef.
You're a bit of a cooking nerd. I don't know if everybody here knows that, but
I do.
We happen to know that you go hard on that. Yeah.
I do. I do like cooking, and I have like all these like, I have all these like devices or gadgets. I'm just like a gadget person, and I also like cooking gadgets. So, what did I bought? I bought an air fryer. This is my latest one I bought last year.
Oh, and you can see my eyes rolling right now.
I do like you don't like the air fryer?
Of course I have an air fryer. Are you kidding me? It's amazing, but also it's just one of those things. Like everybody got an Instant Pot, everybody got an air fryer, everybody got a humidifier and a couple of air purifiers. We've been locked in our goddamn houses. Sorry.
Yes. And I did get I got an air purifier also last year.
Yeah. There were fires. Everyone in California did.
Yes. Yeah. They were like sold out right around the fires last year. Like you could not get one from Amazon.
Oh yeah, I had some MERV 13 filters, like air filters you put in your air conditioning system, your HVAC in your house, and I strapped them to the back of a couple box fans, and you should see the before and after pictures during the fires. It'd be like, I don't know if it did anything, but this sure looks like something happened here.
Yeah, box fan life's the way to go. I don't want to fuck with any proprietary air filters. It's just like my friend has one.
Yeah, Luca made your own air purifier. That was pretty smart. Yeah,
I've been doing it for a bit. I mean, the last year I really just tried to step it up an extra notch. In like, I had an AC as well, and I was like, how can I keep this thing going? So I was cutting out custom sized wedges of these fucking filters and just like shoving them in. And then I had one where I'll post a picture at some point later, but like it was a crazy Frankenstein of a box fan on top of my 2-hose air conditioner with gigantic like wood working clamps holding it to the top of it. It was horrible, but I live by myself and I was comfortable and no one can judge me. Yeah, that's just like the reality of living on the West Coast these years. It's like, just remember to buy your filters every year and pray for the best. Well, cool. Candace, what about yourself?
I, let's see, saw a bunch of movies and I'll get into those. And I also did another podcast this weekend, actually. I'm not going to plug it here. I don't even know if it's posted yet, but I remember when Brazzy came up and he was giving us little chats.
I do.
A couple weeks ago, I returned the favor and I went on his little podcast and I talked about what it's like leveling up as a game designer. So like, what is it like when you're an associate? What is your motivation, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Then mid-level, senior, what, and then when you get to the principal path, like how does your view change? What is your mindset like, etc. So it was really fun. But yeah, the highlight of the weekend definitely was going to see Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings. So fucking good, like easily best Marvel Universe film, like hands down, and by leaps and bounds too.
What are your qualifications for ranking the top Marvel film?
Okay, so just for reference, my favorite Marvel film before this was Deadpool. So take, if Deadpool wasn't your favorite, then probably don't listen to my recommendation. You can listen to quite literally everybody else on the internet right now. But one, it had a cohesive and whole story in such that it did not have any holes or plot gaps or one of those things where like your immersion is broken momentarily, but you're like, oh, actually that makes sense. Usually your immersion gets broken. They're just like, oh, fuck it. We're just going to keep going in the MCU movies. They're like, who cares? It's magic. And two, of course, it was like extremely well acted. The characters were really interesting and like everybody deserves a fucking Oscar for that. And then three, the fantasy of it, just the world was represented, and especially like the fantasy of that specific pocket of the MCU was just top notch. It was just very idyllic. It made a lot of sense. The villain had realistic and kind of flawed motivations. Like the characters had flaws, just all the things. Like it was a narratively complete story, which you don't expect really from a fucking superhero movie, right? So yeah, I would say like if in the vein of Black Panther, it had good characters, amazing acting, good story, but then now add like 25% just because it was amazing. And the effects were just like mind blowing.
Well, fuck, I gotta watch it soon. I too revisited all the Marvel movies over the pandemic. They are just like comfort food for me. And I know what you mean. Usually they just feel like they err on the side of like extremely high kind of mainstream normie competence, but you're like rarely surprised by them. Like you sort of know what you're getting into, but Black Panther certainly was a surprise and sticks out. I'll be excited to see this one too. So,
Yeah. So
What'd
well,
you do?
what did I
yeah,
do?
go ahead.
I had some American friends come into town. So, of course, I lost my
Yankees.
socialized health care. I have Delta variant now, and that's just how it goes. But no, they were visiting, and it was like my friend's partner now works remotely for EA Vancouver up here. So she had not met any of her coworkers or anything in person yet. And these people came out in mass. Like the skate team is fucking cool. Like imagine not having met any of your coworkers and then having like 12 people show up to greet you to have pizza and beers and stuff with you and hang out the whole fucking weekend in the middle of a pandemic. Like I was really impressed. And also it was the most I've been out in public and doing like touristy feeling things in years. Like my social batteries are so small now. By the end of it, I just wanted to like be under a fucking blanket and recharge in the dark. But it was so fucking fun. We got like the full spectrum of Vancouver weather. It was like raining cats and dogs the first day. Then it was this kind of nice misty cloud cover stuff. On the morning we took a hike, and then it got sunny. It was an excellent sales pitch, I feel like, to this couple because they may consider moving up here, which I would love. So yeah, I was just doing social stuff all weekend, and I loved it. But I need to kind of cool it off, get back to my games. I beat the Ascent. I'm trying to think about playing something next. My friend who was doing Mass Effect at the same time as me went on to Andromeda. I've always kind of given it a pass, but I might crawl into that and see how it goes. I don't know really what I'm in for. I wonder if it like ever kind of, I remember the controversy around it and like the horrible facial animations and everything, but I wonder if it eventually settled down and it turns out that the reaction was overblown because it was just like the outrage of the week, I'm not
How
sure.
dare you? How dare you assume that the internet ever disproportionately reacts to being let down?
Like, was it that bad? I'll find out. Anywho, game news-wise, it was like I feel like kind of a quiet week. Like we briefly went over the RuneLite HD micro saga that is already over with, I guess, earlier in the chat here. It seems like this fan creation of like an HD remaster for old school RuneScape was like finally slated to come out, and Jagex like shut it down right on the day it was supposed to release. Very kind of Nintendo style, but the timing and the optics were just awful, and quickly this post just rocketed to the top of Reddit, and now they have already walked it back, and they said, no, we're going to let this HD version go through. That is until they finish their own HD version. So everybody wins, I guess. False alarm. There was this League Series teaser that everybody's been posting. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any diehard League fans in the room? Candace, cough, cough.
I mean, Vex is really exciting. I like the fantasy of Vex. I love the trailer for the reveal. It's just has a lot of personality, as the League trailer reveals always do. Yeah, the season didn't they just dump something like let me see, Pentakill, like metal album or some shit. That was kind of cool. I watched that. Right, Games Music. Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
Another trailer there was really cool. But yeah, I don't really play a lot of League. I only play with my coworkers whenever we want to blow off some steam.
Yeah, it's on Netflix, right? It's gonna be on Netflix.
I think so. You were the one who brought it to my attention.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a Netflix exclusive. So yeah, I think I like the animation. I thought it was unique. It wasn't like Pixar-ish. It wasn't just it had its own style that I thought that looks kind of faithful to Riot's and League's kind of style. So
Alan Wake Remastered got leaked and then announced and confirmed for all the platforms and the Epic Store. I'm kind of hyped for that just because I went on like a Remedy binge earlier this year, and they've united all their universes together now. I don't know if any of you two played the original Alan Wake, but they are tying everything together. And I wanted to revisit the original game because I kind of fell off it the first time around, and now this remaster will give me a good chance to jump in. One cool thing I saw in the discussion about that is that it's a remaster in which one would expect ray tracing and DLSS and all the kind of like enhanced goodies you get on like an Epic Store launch these days. But it's kind of a problematic game to reinvent the lighting for because the lighting is so tied into the gameplay itself. I mean, you basically have like a weaponized flashlight with batteries that you're using to combat the dark in his kind of horrorscape. And so suddenly changing all of that to be realistic ray traced lighting that bounces off everywhere as opposed to like specific art crafted lighting would have big implications. I don't know. It felt like my first time looking at a game that like would have to be spared some aspects of the remaster treatment because it would really change how it played. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, I never played Alan Wake, so I can't really comment. But it just seems like remakes are like its own genre now, huh? There's like so many of them, I feel like, which is cool. I think it's good for fans. It's interesting with remakes in games. You don't see a lot of like why aren't they making new games, right? Like that you see with movies. Like whenever they do some sort of reboot or something, everyone's pissed. But not so with games, it feels like.
Yeah, this is like your whole drought of creativity and AAA rant we could probably go into. But one thing I want to touch on real quick before we get into the main topic. On the topic of inevitable reboots, the motherfucking Matrix teaser site is up, and I promised myself I wouldn't really get excited for a new Matrix film, and I'm excited for a new Matrix film, and I fucking hate it because like I know I might get my heart broken again, but I don't know if any of you went to the teaser site, but like, just seeing the code and hearing some of the sound effects and like, dude, I'm so ready.
I mean, I'll see it day one. I mean, unless it gets just destroyed in some sort of review, but it's weird because it comes out like in December or something, but we haven't even seen a trailer yet. It's pretty unusual, don't you? See a trailer?
I think the teaser trailer is supposed to be tomorrow. Yeah, they were filming right at the beginning of COVID, and then obviously that happened. So running behind schedule. Don't really know. But
damn, it's tomorrow, huh? Okay.
That's right. Yeah, this teaser website, which by the way is still at the original 1999 URL, whatisthematrix.com, which is amazing. Like Space Jam vibes.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. The teaser comes out tomorrow, and then we'll see how she goes. I mean, I'm going to see it day one no matter what. It's not really worth belaboring, but fingers crossed. And then, I don't know, if it does okay, like if Netflix wants to fucking turn additional exploration into like, an 8-episode show or something like that, I mean, whatever, I'll take more. I missed The Matrix Online, and that's like one of my huge gaming regrets because I know that is a medium in which they built out a lot of the story and resolved some things, and I was just playing WoW. So I totally skipped over it, and I've never watched any kind of like plot recaps on how they wrap things up. I don't know if either of you two played it. Any Matrixers in chat? No?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, I saw one friend of mine post that he used to work on one of these Matrix games, and I guess it didn't really sell very well. It was like trending, like you said, a little bit, and so that was funny. I don't know why they didn't really sell that well. Like, Matrix was a huge IP. I mean, is that?
Yeah, I feel like maybe this came up in our underappreciated games podcast, but the Enter the Matrix game for the PlayStation 2 era, I felt was like a pretty solid playthrough. Granted, I was a super fan and, its target audience. But I remember controlling fairly well, and like how bullet time should be was pretty established from, Max Payne a few years earlier. And like you got a whole bunch of bonus little cutscenes from the perspectives of these two other pilots, Ghost and Niobe. And so there were like 2 campaigns you could play. And I just remember destroying this thing in a weekend on a rental, I think. And back when you still rented games. I thought it was all right.
Is that going to be like a Matrix MMO? I remember reading about that.
Dude, that's what Matrix Online was, but I don't know.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, it was Monolith, Warner Brothers, I think. But anywho, yeah, anything that like launched right around the time that WoW first came out is probably like slipping through the cracks. Matrix didn't really hang on in there in pop culture for too long after Revolutions. I guess it left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Kind of faded quickly. Whereas like Lord of the Rings, they were milking that, and they still have been for every single year since.
How dare you, sir?
Yeah.
I dare. Okay. I don't know. I just dare. All right. So we wanted to talk about virtual economies today. Chris, you brought this up. And as usual, I will start by just kind of defining something. An economy in this case is the process or system by which goods and services are produced, sold, and bought in a country or region, or in this case, game. And I'm wondering why this topic has kind of caught your eye this week.
No real reason. I noticed like someone brought it up in the recommended topics, and I do think it's a really good topic and an interesting one, and one I'm thinking a lot about right now. And it's really interesting now, especially because there's this whole kind of surge of crypto taking over the world, and this new genre in games, which is they call it play to earn. And so you play the game and you earn some cryptocurrency in the game, and then you could sell it. So it's basically kind of the Diablo 3 auction house revisited, right? What's interesting, I was talking with someone who works in this space, who makes a game or was working on a play to earn game. And he basically said that, yeah, Diablo basically ruined the idea of play to earn for like over a decade, because everyone was just like, well, we can make that game, but Diablo 3, And his view was just basically Blizzard missed the mark on that game, and the auction house in the game, and it kind of ruined the space for a bit. And I don't disagree with that. I think there was probably a better way they could have done that real money auction house. I just remember so many of my friends at the time, my guild, they were so excited for D3 with the real money auction house, and they're like, I'm going to quit my job and just play Diablo and sell items, but it had a lot of problems with the model, with how Diablo works. And, essentially you just pay $5 and you get like decent items that really kind of almost the game's over, right? And so they didn't really think all these scenarios through deeply. Yeah, so in general, I mean, not even talking about crypto, I still think really economies in games is really fascinating. And Valve hires for God, I don't even know what game it's for. Maybe it's probably for Dota, I guess. Like economists who are PhD economists to help figure out monetization in their games and all of that. And obviously WoW and MMOs have auction houses that are kind of simple, but they could be really kind of complex, and they have complex problems. We were talking about in our private channel a little bit when I was asking Kevin about the auction house in WoW. In the beginning, in beta, each auction house, like the Darnassus one, the Ironforge Storm one, etc., were all kind of siphoned. They're all had their own sort of. They're all just like separate, right? And then at some point, everybody just was like, "Well, no one fucking uses the Darnassus one," and so they linked them all. So, anyways, there's just a lot to chew on here, I think, and I think it's a good topic to talk about.
Like I haven't spent very little time looking into like crypto gaming and play to earn and stuff like this. So, one of the problems you bring up with the Diablo auction house, maybe the biggest problem, is that you were kind of shortcutting the reward loop, because you were there were two aspects to the real money auction house. There was putting in-game currency in to obtain items and shortcut the reward loop, and then there was the other part, which was selling in-game items for cash if you wanted to. I don't remember, were those two like sales areas of the auction house segregated in any way? Because I never sold anything for real money. I don't really remember. I only bought things with in-game gold. And I do remember having like a heavy Diablo play session, and what would happen is like I would spend the end of it spending 10 minutes just browsing listings and buying stuff that was stat optimized for my character. And then the next day I would play more with that exact gear. And it seemed like I never really got the gear that I needed to drop. So the auction house is where I was going with the currency of my playtime, which was gold. But yeah, I'm kind of wondering if play to earn I don't want to say it runs into the same problems that this ran into, but we've had discussions on the economy in classic WoW, GDKP and stuff. And I think one thing that's interesting for me with virtual economies now is that the lines between them obviously and the real world have been only blurring over time. And so they don't really exist as these like neat closed ecosystems to study anymore. Like they still need to be constructed like that when you have multiple games interfacing with each other in a platform like a Steam ecosystem or something where there's no way to kind of get the money out. But even in situations like that, third-party sites get set up where people can take real money and get it in, and presumably they can obtain real money by selling services in the game through these same sites. So, and I just feel like that's become more and more common, right? Because the stigma of that has just fallen down over time. It really just doesn't seem like there's as much need for. There are ways to sell a game that has a real money component in it now that are easier to swallow and maybe won't be considered immediately pay to win than there were even just a couple of years ago. And it really does feel like that's the direction that the cultural acceptance is moving in, that like the window is shifting in, right?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say like, what the zeitgeist is or what the mood of the gaming community is about games that inject like real money into the game. There's not a lot of really good examples so far of pay to earn or play to earn. The biggest is this game called Axie Infinity that it's basically a Pokemon game that you can connect, or it's like a turn-based like RPG sort of game that you can collect these little kind of creatures, and there's each a unique one, and you could trade them and things like that. And it kind of blew up, and I don't know what the valuation is, like billions of dollars valuation in this company and whatnot. And they make, $1 billion a year or something, I don't know, of money being moved around the economy. But the problem is just that, so what's happened is the people who are mostly active in this game are a lot of kind of the underclass or sort of, the average person in the Philippines. And so because they can earn more money in the game in the Philippines than they can doing normal jobs down the street or in their communities.
Because of crypto, yeah.
Yeah, because of crypto. So essentially it's just kind of funneling money from whales all throughout the world into this, mostly Filipino community. And so it's just sort of like globalization just on steroids, essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but if you ask like the average player who plays the game, they don't really like the game necessarily. They just like earning money, not having to work at a restaurant or I don't know, wash dishes or whatever random, blue collar job in the Philippines. And so, but the thing is, there could still be room for a really great game that has, something like the real money auction house from Diablo that doesn't break the game, but kind of accentuates it. I don't know. I think it's inevitable for a game like that to come out. And right now, it's just a gold rush, or it's just a race to try to make a game in that space that could just really blow up. There's so many risks involved, right? Which is just one of them is the regulatory risks. With crypto in general, there's a lot of gray area of like how the government is going to rule on all these things. In America, the government is really, really slow because we have really checks and balances, and the system is designed to be slow. And so it will take a while for, the U.S. government to react to crypto in general, and then to react to play to earn games is going to be take even longer. And so I think the idea of a lot of people right now is just like, just make a bunch of play to earn games, and by the time the U.S. gets around to figuring out what's going on, you've already cashed out, right? It's why kind of internet businesses have really taken off, is because the internet wasn't really regulated, still isn't really regulated.
Yeah.
Because the government hasn't really, wrapped its head around how to regulate it or what to do. So we'll see, but yeah.
It sounds like you're saying, I don't know if have you played in the Axie Infinity?
I have not. Well, if you want to play Axie Infinity, in order to start playing, you have to buy, I think, one of the coins or a few of them, and it's like basically you have to spend $1,000 to just start playing.
No shit.
Uh,
Like that's the
yeah,
base. I
yeah,
mean, how? Because you need what, some base amount of Ethereum to be able to buy your first. I don't know.
yes,
It's like a Pokemon battler type thing. They don't give you anything for free. There's no like
yeah,
starter.
yeah, yeah. I mean, really, the game is just, I mean, low key a Ponzi. So
I
it's a
mean,
Ponzi scheme. It's pyramid scheme.
sure, but it's funny that like this one, the way you talk about it sounds like there's something specific about it that has like really taken off, and they list a bunch of impressive partners down at the bottom. So if it's pretty bereft of like great gameplay, I'm wondering, is it just because it's the sort of highest production value thing to sit atop of a blockchain so far, and the scarcity of the blockchain and the allure of easily getting real money out is like what's giving it all of its momentum, or is there like any actual
Well,
secret sauce to it? Is it just the best one of
I
these so
mean,
far? It
I
is
think
really
the worst
cute.
thing about it, I think the worst thing about it is probably the game. I think, why it's has a lot of value is a lot for its underlining kind of technology that they're using, right? To the whole model, the whole economic model and stuff is most of their valuation. Or at least that's kind of my interpretation. I'm not an expert. It's just but I have spent like the last couple of weeks kind of reading up on this and trying to get
Yeah,
more
yeah.
in tune with it just because I like, I'm just a nerd and just like knowing about the industry and all these things. Because there is some belief that, in 5-10 years, most payments will be crypto and most games will have crypto in them in some degree. Like, not most games probably will not be play to earn games, but they will use crypto as payments, and maybe some items in the game could be purchased with them, or microtransactions will use some sort of coin or something. That sounds like a reasonable guess to me. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, ignoring crypto, I still think, economies and games are really interesting. It's really interesting that, I mean, if you can kind of think about all these different coins that are out, like all these other crypto coins. There's so many of them, and there's probably one every 5 minutes being created. Really, games have been having, we're one of the first things to ever have like a virtual kind of economy or coin, right? Like the WoW token or just gold in general. And if you notice, like Axies has this kind of situation that was kind of similar to what WoW had, where a lot of there was all these like quote unquote Chinese gold farming companies that it was more lucrative for them to grind gold and sell it illegally somehow on eBay or whatever than to work in a factory in Beijing, right? It's less so today than it was 10, 15 years ago when gold farming was a big problem in WoW, but it's the same situation, right, with this Axie game in the Philippines. So once again, I feel like games are the ones who are always spearheading all these new territories.
Yeah, I think globalization on steroids was a great way to describe it. Because it doesn't seem all that differently from somebody being a full-time gold farmer, except that now, the place it's happening has moved, perhaps, from China over to the Philippines because living standards and such have changed, and now everything is much more liquid because when you're talking about these like fast, instantaneous international transfers, you can completely skip banks and all that shit and not have to be under so much regulation and scrutiny if you just keep it entirely within crypto. So, and that immediately adds a bunch of fungibility into a whole bunch of other things. It really does seem like, given that games are as global as they are, when you're going to connect people from all these different spheres, as soon as you want to involve money, some kind of like token is probably the way that things are going to go. And it looks like Axie is just built on top. It's just using Ethereum to do all their stuff. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, another thing I thought was interesting that we were talking about in this Discord last or the weekend, I think, was, I guess there's another game called Embersword, which is, I think, another going to be kind of a play to earn game. And they had what they call a land sale. And a land sale is, there's like land in the game that they kind of just put on the blockchain, or that that you could use crypto technology to sell land that it's kind of like NFTs, but for just plots of land in the game. And they've made millions off of that too. And what I found interesting, that I didn't know this until recently, is that the founder, the CEO of Bright Star Studios that makes Embersword, was I think he was one of the top raters in Nihilum. What I can't remember what that guild is called. Candace would know.
Yeah, it's Nihilum, the
Nihilum,
European guilds.
Yeah. Interesting.
From a player perspective, just like backing off of crypto a tiny bit, I mean, I'm happy to keep kind of going into it, but I was thinking of what Vadis from our Discord brought up about their anticipation for the topic and the game within a game that is, goblin-esque behavior within something like World of Warcraft and the whole deep world of TSM sniping and everything like that. Have either of you two ever like gone really deep into trying to master like the game economy versus the game itself?
I don't know about Candace, not me really. I mean, I would do is use the auction house. I probably use the auction house in WoW almost every day. When I used to play, especially during Classic, WoW Classic to Lich King, etc. And I always liked the idea of the auction house. I always thought it was an immersive kind of system, right? I think we were talking about systems last time, and the auction house is a system that makes the world feel big and like deep and yeah, there are certainly players who kind of, it's a game within a game. I noticed in the chat people are talking about Auctioneer and all the mods that just really amp up the auction house and WoW. Yeah, I think it's really, really one of the most interesting. When they talk about MMO-like features, the auction house is always kind of one of them. Like Tarkov, for example, they always say, "Oh, it has MMO-like features." Well, there's not very many things that are MMO like in Tarkov, except other than the auction house. But in Tarkov, the auction house is like a huge part of the game. Like one of my friends, he played Tarkov a lot, and then eventually all he was doing in Tarkov was on the auction house, and he was making insane money in the game. It's kind of useless money in the game at some point because they wiped the server, but it was really, really fun for it, right? To just make a killing on the auction house. But I was never a type of person who just played the auction house. Just there's a means to an end. I don't know about Candace, but
Yeah, for me, an auction house is just the place I go if I can't feasibly get something on my own, or if I've deemed that it's too hard to get. I want to go to the auction house. Though I will say, when Diablo 3 did have an auction house, that drove my gameplay, like the real money auction house, wherein like I wanted to be super progressed. I wanted to stay on top with all my friends who also were super progressed in the game, doing like the highest level difficulty. Because I remember the first time I got like a legendary I couldn't use. It was like a storm shield, but it was a really good roll on a storm shield. And one of my friends says, I bet that would sell for the max on the real money auction house. And the maximum back then was $250 for a game that I got for free because I worked for Blizzard, right? I didn't have to buy into the game.
Uh-oh.
And so
Sounds
I was like,
some
haha.
insider trading shit. I don't know.
Yeah, with that loot. Yeah, you can guarantee that loot for me. And so I was just like, sure, why not? I have nothing to lose. And I put it on the real money auction house, and lo and behold, within 3 hours, I didn't get $250 because there was like the cut from it and like all the other shit, but sold for the max. And I was like, well, now this has changed the way I play the game entirely, wherein all of the best items I sell, I don't even keep for myself. And even though there is like an intense moment of joy that you get whenever that item drops and you're like, man, this is going to be actual money in my pocket, or like the like, I was really excited when I got a legendary, then I was really disappointed when I couldn't use it, and then when someone told me it was worth something, I got really excited again, right? But then the game started feeling like a job where I didn't get the nicest things, and it actually made me feel like, it's a really dumb analogy, but for a really long time my ex-husband would always get the better computer, so we always deemed that it was more important for him to have a better computer because he was like a programmer and all these things.
Okay.
He had to run like Visual Studio or some shit.
Yeah.
And so
Compile
anytime
times, yeah.
anytime he got a PC, I would get his old PC. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna like buy my own PC. We were poor, by the way, like very poor people. I was like, I'm gonna buy my own PC with this. So I'm gonna play Diablo until I can get a better PC. And I did, and it felt really good. But definitely, I didn't want to play the game again at all. Once I bought my PC, I was like, well, this is like the joy, the moment to moment joy is gone from this game. I now only see it as a converter from my time to money and like a way to hang out with my friends. So I wonder also if in some way that's the kind of feeling people get when they play Xyz or whatever it is, where it's like maybe I'll play like either like with my friends. I don't know if it's like an MMO like that, or like talk about it with my friends, but like not really. Even if the game is fun, and Diablo 3 is a very fun game, I didn't get to enjoy it because it didn't feel like something I was doing for joy. There's my speech.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is I get the same sort of feeling sometimes too. Like in WoW, when it was, every run, every dungeon run or whatever, just got boiled down to like currency, or like the raid was just all about DKP, or when everything gets boiled down to just kind of like, oh, this all it will give me is this sort of like monetary value or whatever, even if it's like an in-game monetary value, and then it's just like, then you feel bad for doing something that's inefficient, right? Like, oh, I could do that battleground, but all you get is honor, and I'm honor capped. Well, am I wasting my time there? And all MMOs mostly, in virtual worlds and a lot of games like that, kind of, you have to kind of think about the economy when doing anything, right? And it's like a huge part of like game balance with the games too, is that players will just do whatever is efficient and whatever gives them the most rewards, right? Most currency. Yeah, I mean, it can just break you out of the game, and it just becomes unfun, especially if you're a type of person kind of like how I am, where it's like, well, I'm not going to do whatever's fun, just fun. I have to do, I don't want to be dumb and do something that doesn't give me good rewards or make me, richer in the game or whatever.
Yeah, and the irony with my situation was like in Diablo, I got to feel like that second class citizen, like I always did to like my ex-husband in a way. Because all the best gear I would sell to other people, and I would get like the second or third best gear. And the irony is like I did all that so that I could get a good PC. I don't know, it's just really funny. So I could stop being so second class. I made myself supremely second class. It's interesting to think of like, so essentially, if you're the person that's making the game, and the game is either like you've made a play to earn game that is like Robin Hood, right? It's for the good. It's gonna like rob from the whales, and it's gonna give to the poor, and like you've done something great for the world. And maybe like it's like the Philippines where they can't decide if it's a asset or a security, so people just get to do whatever the fuck they want with it.
Yeah.
And like until the SEC is just like, well, hold on, hold on. But in like the worst case scenario, you're the king in the Robin Hood story, right? Like you're putting on this guise that people can earn money, and it's only coming from rich people, so like who cares? But then you're taking your cut of it, and then you know maybe you're taking a really big cut of it, and maybe you're like programming the game such that the odds are always in your favor, or maybe you're even behind the scenes constantly changing the numbers so that people can't so like people can't reverse engineer your shit, but then two, because you're maximizing your own profits. And like as the game maker, you get to do that, which is like that's the part that's really scary to me, is like I mean, think of like a slot machine. Like behind the scenes, a slot machine has a fucking guaranteed like payout to the person that buys it, right? Like it's never going to make itself go broke. There's like a guaranteed income that's going to come from that slot machine, which feels really dirty. And now like add on to that like poor people playing in the Philippines, or add on to that like children who just want a cute Pokemon or something, and it just feels really predatory and kind of nasty to me.
Yeah, and then it's always like you have this weird psychology where it's like, cool, I got something valuable, but then you're like, and you want to keep it just for fun, but then you feel dumb because it's worth all this money, right?
Yeah, and then like you could add all the rest of like social addictive shit, where if you wanted to make like MLM, or fuck, why not? Like add porn to the mix and tokens and whatnot. Like you
Oh,
could
they
do some
have.
real. All right, okay, yep. I'm not. I wouldn't have expected that I was revolutionary in that sense, but like just gets it gets really
I don't
morally
know.
gray.
I really don't even know. I don't know. I'm
And
just
then what
saying.
would even
I assume
happen?
so.
It's like really scary too, because what would even happen if you did make the one that was like the huge success? That's like a Roblox or a Fortnite or something, and it's just generating more money than you even know what to do with. And then the SEC's on your ass. Like,
Oh yeah.
could you even just like, go to prison? Like, who even knows?
Yeah. I mean, it's so uncharted territory. And the thing is like, as a game developer, do you really want to be like responsible for people's like livelihoods? You're like an employer then. I don't know. It's just
if I could find a way to play Robin Hood, I'd probably do it, but I'd probably end up in prison.
I mean, paying for power in games and selling things in games to obtain real money, like you both were describing the problem that you ran into with, say, like D3, where once everything starts to line up for you on the money axis, and that's the only lens through which you can sort of see the game anymore. But it strikes me that like these games based on the blockchain and that are sort of doing so not just because they want scarcity to be, I don't know, a fun game designery element of the game, and are doing it because they want enough crypto to move through their system that they can skim in such a way that the profits they take are like exempt from the SEC or whatever. More of like the sort of in the crypto scheme space than I suppose the regular game developer business space, because as we all know, the way our regular dollars and cents economy functions is like completely on the level and properly regulated. It seems to me like the people who are choosing to play those sorts of games and just be looking at basically taking profits the entire time, they don't have a problem with everything being on the money axis because they're playing the larger game of trying to get rich. Like. That's the goal, and that is the thing that is thrilling them. I mean, the rat race in itself is just one sort of giant game if you zoom all the way out. There's my galaxy brain take on that. And you want from that experience are, narrative, a feeling of mastery, immersion, flexing your dexterity, all that kind of stuff, then maybe these blockchain games to you feel like a total fucking aberration. But if you're just in games for the kind of power fantasy, having the money just right in plain view of what you're doing, I can see how that really wouldn't interfere at all. Like, I'm not that kind of gamer right now, but I am also not, under the impression that I'd quit everything and become like a Twitch star or something like that. It does seem like getting rich off a game is just kind of chasing like an alternate pathway that is like a response to, man, this is getting way out of hand. But I would suggest that there are probably only a couple of short steps in between the popularity of games like this and unstaffed Burger Kings that have to shut down because no one wants to fucking show up for work. Like, I think the growth of activities like this and shuffling money around this way is just a big reflection of kind of like valuation and the creation of value in where we are now. And it'll be wild to see where we go. I got to abort there because I am way out in space.
I was just thinking, like, what you said was really interesting because you're talking about like the kinds of games people play and like what would make someone want to play, like the reason you play games, and it's not for making money and stuff. And so it started making me think, like, if the superpower that I have in this world, and by superpower I mean like Meg Griffin can grow her fingernails really long, like the weakest, like worst superpower, but like if the contribution that I'm making to society and the one thing that I'm good at in this world is like making a game fun, and let's just say that I've done that like at least one time in my life, like in 15 years I've successfully made a game fun a couple of times. If that's my aim in life and that's where I find my purpose, is entertainment and bringing people together, then I feel like the worst thing I could do is use that power to make play to earn games fun, because like they shouldn't be fun. I think that like you're either playing to like make money or you're playing because it's fun, you're like getting joy from it. And I think that once you mix those two things, like one, like my experience with Diablo showed me that those two things don't coexist in my brain. Though for some people I'm sure it can. I'm not shaming any of those people, but like would it just be irresponsible to make a really fun game that robs people of their money, and that you also have the keys to which that you could just keep robbing them of more of their money? I don't know.
It does seem like the dark side of game development, right? I mean, it is kind of, but there are things about playing a game in which you just achieve, financial superiority with your flexes on the blockchain and the profits you're taking out of it that is like really not far from a lot of traditional games anyways. I mean, having cooler shit than, your gaming neighbor is like right at the heart of pretty much every MMO sort of already. I mean, it's not like when you play Monopoly with your friends, there exists a version of Monopoly where I can drop an extra $10 and pick up an extra, couple $1,000s of in-game cash or whatever like that. I don't think that game would be super fun. But then when you make an analogy like that, you really do start to just see how the ties between that style of game design and opening the economy like that and gambling all feel really close. And I don't know. I don't have like a giant moral take on it, but you can. I would understand why you're like so concerned about developing something like that. It really does feel like using your powers for evil, right?
Yeah, and it is in its infancy right now. So it's like it's going to become a way bigger topic, just like how loot boxes and microtransactions have been and free to play games have been such a huge topic in the industry. So, but I did want to say that we open up the floor, and I brought up Gary Star here. If you have any comments or questions about
Yeah.
virtual economy.
Virtual economies, love them. It's something actually interesting where, especially with the MMO stuff, we've run into a bunch of games where they all have these currencies that are built into them. I'm just kind of curious, what do you think would happen if we actually had an MMO where there wasn't a currency, where you just didn't earn gold by killing things and pick up some stuff, but again, going back to a goods where you would almost have to do a bid and barter system using the stuff you gathered throughout the world as you move through it. What do you think that kind of a world would look like, and how would that go in today's expectation of an economy inside of a large scale game?
Ooh. I mean, you can always look to the past, though I'm not sure that's 100% applicable here. If you think of a game like Diablo 2, when the gold was a thing in the game, but also not a thing in the game, the players just made their own currency out of Stones of Jordan. So like they'll determine the going rate. Like it'll just be fractioned, or fractured. I mean, where it's like they'll find something that is the gold standard for whatever exists in the game, and so you'll be on a chase to, if you really don't want there to be like a currency in your game, value in various ways these new gold standards. And so I think it'd be really unsatisfying in that way if someone were to try to regulate it. But there's also nothing wrong with players deciding what is the gold standard in an economy, if that makes any sense. So I don't know why games have not done it yet. It doesn't seem like it would be harmful, but I think that it's much easier to control if you add a currency. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think honestly, kind of the player experience is a little more intuitive and easier if there is a currency engineered by the developers. And probably what the real, like an economist would say, well, if you have stone to Jordans or boar tusks or whatever in the game that people are trading for, those are essentially currencies, right? Like they're just kind of emergent currencies in the game. And ultimately, the designers and developers are going to have to balance the game around whatever it is, like pigtails or boar tusks or stones of Jordan, whatever it is going to turn into what the currency is going to be in the game. And, there is a world where the experience could be really interesting and fun just because the currencies change and it so happens that the gameplay is fun because of that. But it could also turn into the gameplay shit and, the experience is not fun because the designers didn't really have a chance to really think through what the currencies are going to be in the game, right? I really don't have a lot of experiences with games where the currency was just ad hoc or just player driven like that. But that's kind of just my higher level thinking of the concept.
If anyone does, feel free to come up and talk about it. By the way,
you know what I want to see more of? I want to see more of services that players can provide for each other in a game that are like wholesome and good. Like my friend paid somebody, like a YouTuber, who the only thing she does is release these YouTube videos of houses in Final Fantasy that she decorates. and she does it in really crafty ways. Like she makes a TV console out of what shit you wouldn't expect.
Mhm.
And so that's how she makes her money. Is she's like an interior decorator for people, and I think there's so much joy there. I would love to see more games where players can provide a service for other players that is meaningful in a way that drives its own little economy.
Yeah, that's such an interesting, talking point there. It could be its whole show on its own, really. There's a lot to talk about there. I won't bring it up now since we're, so late in the show. But Reynolds, any question or thought on the topic?
Yeah, I had a question about what you guys thought about the company that develops these games actively preventing players from exchanging in real world currency. Like I think for World of Warcraft example, the earlier years there was a lot more of banning of bots, of looking for people who were trading with real world gold, these Chinese gold farmers and sellers. Today, the amount of bots that exist and the ease of transaction in real world currency and kind of the whole climate has changed where you can buy a spot in a raid and get the items that you want. Is there a role for the developer of the game if they wanted to kind of curate a more closed economy within the game to prevent, or is that useless, do you think?
It's not. I mean, it seems like they did spend more time trying to restrict those external factors from coming in back in the day. And I'm kind of wondering. I mean, the obvious answer is, the WoW token exists now, so there's like a sanctioned channel through which people can get their real money into the game, and Blizzard takes a cut from it, and it's kind of like the Steam approach to piracy, where if you just make something way easier, you're going to pull people into it versus the alternative. But it is interesting how there was at some point just a shift from like wanting to really defend the integrity of the economy from external gold to opening it wider, which of course then starts to, have, we've seen all, the videos from content creators over the last couple months about what the WoW token has done in terms of in-game inflation and price expectations with boosts, legendary crafting, stuff like that. It does really seem like at some point there was a mindset shift where they just got way more tolerant of that. And like, do you think that, I don't know, I'm wondering, do you think that there is anything to that mindset shift apart from just making more money? Do you think they decided to be more kind of laissez-faire about it and say, let people get the real money in, or was it just...
Well, yeah. I mean, this is a really, really great question and great subtopic of this topic. And, like what Lucas said about the WoW token, essentially, the WoW token wasn't really just created to sort of make money. Really, it was really to kind of, I mean, there was a war on the bots and on the gold farmers since WoW's inception, right? I think one of the first like cryptocurrencies was started by one of the leaders of one of these Chinese farming groups in China. I think even like a venture capitalist funded one of these gold farming companies that was, started in China or whatever. It was like a legitimate business idea or whatever, right?
Steve Bannon?
Was this? It was something like that. It was like, I forgot who it was. But anyways, the token was kind of created to combat that, right? And just like, well, we just cannot stop all these. You just shut down one and three more pop up. And so essentially the token was created so that Blizzard was essentially doing it themselves, and the gold farmers just couldn't compete. Now, there's still other gold farmer groups out there that do still compete with the token and undercut it a bit, but it's a lot harder, like insurmountably harder now, right?
Right.
And the thing is, like, there's no virtual world out there I can think of that hasn't succumbed to this sort of phenomenon where people are trying to sell things in the game for real money, you name it, like Eve is another game. Tarkov has a huge problem with it. And so, yeah, I just, and this is kind of the premise, by the way, of like the play to earn game creators. Or like, look at history, look at all the players who want to do this, and you just cannot stop it. So why not build a game to support it from the ground up?
So
Um,
can
yeah.
can I make a point here? To some degree, I think that what you're saying is true. I take issue with that last part because a game like World of Warcraft that has gone to the token, that has monetized, I faded away from World of Warcraft because I lost interest and it did feel like it had stepped away from its roots. And I'm one of those WoW Classic guys where that problem came up in WoW Classic where there was no token and all of that. Someone who would make the argument that you're making, that gamers just want to put money on the table anyway to advance their characters. I think that not all gamers do, and unfortunately you can't quantify the gamers who don't. You can easily quantify the ones who do because you have dollars to show. The ones who don't either don't play or don't contribute, and I think get lost in that equation.
No, I agree with you. Like, the whole point of a virtual world is to break away from the real world, and that everybody is now in a different sort of meritocracy, and it can destroy the meritocracy in the game if like someone who's sort of well off can just buy anything in it, and then everyone's just like, oh, okay, well this is just like the real world. Well, screw this, right? So I do agree with you. I think it's a challenge for games to, especially MMOs, to try to kind of coexist in this sort of system. But
Really
yeah,
interesting, I think, though, what you say, because like I'm trying to understand. Like, first, let me lay it clear. I think that pay to win is a really shitty game model, and it's especially shitty for like one MMORPG, which the RPG has a lot of like heaviness there, where you expect to have to like earn your levels and earn your gear, and like the part of the game is the leveling or progression system or whatever it is. And so please understand that I talk about this in the sense that I don't believe in pay to win personally as a developer. But what's interesting to me is if you had somebody who paid your guild 100,000 gold or something. It's probably like in WoW's economy, that's like nothing now. It's like a joke. But like, let's say it was like WoW vanilla or whatever, and you paid some guild 100,000 gold, like back when
Mhm.
Encourage launched or something like that. And like,
Mhm.
you're like, I want the best gear. I want my full tier 8 from Naxxramas or like whatever. And then you get you get all 8 pieces of your tier gear. And like some people would look down on that and be like, that's kind of stupid. Like that person didn't earn his spot in the guild. He's not a good enough player to like deserve that gear. But like in general, they're not as disgusted as if they found out that that person, instead of paying 100,000 gold, paid everybody in the guild 100 real life dollars or something.
Mhm.
Oh, I paid $4,000 for the gear. Like, well, now it's a fucking problem. Now it's pay to win. And it's like, well, it kind of was pay to win before when it was like gold currency. And then what was also really interesting to me is whenever I said, like, it's cool to have like the wholesome kind of services where somebody comes and decorates your house for in-game currency, and like nobody bats an eye at that. They're not like, fuck that YouTuber for being creative and like making a house like cosmetically better, right? And so there's that other axis that's not just like time and service, i.e. money, because like your money that you make is also kind of like a conversion of your life energy to like some fucking currency. But like but then you say like, oh, but if it's just cosmetic, like there's no power there. So like one is kind of gross because there's player power, but then the other one's not gross at all because it's just like she made your house pretty. But I would also love to hear if anyone's just like, no, no services should be in MMOs like that, even if it's as wholesome as like a 13-year-old decorating your house. Anyways, that's a really long tangent to say like it's really hard to identify the places where it feels scummy and gross, which is also why like loot boxes feel completely acceptable to some people and gross to others. So I guess that this is my long-winded way of asking you, Reynolds. Do you feel like the game is made worse for you as an individual because somebody else bought gear for 100,000 gold?
Unequivocally, yes.
Okay.
Damn.
Is it better or worse if that person paid $4,000 for it?
Like to another human or through a
To 40
rephrase that.
people.
I think I'm not following.
Okay. instead of paying a guild 100,000 gold, he paid 39 other people $3,900. Sorry, he paid 39 other people $100 to do the same thing instead of the gold.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate you separating that. I think I still find it disgusting, and only because I think, well, disgusting is not the right word. I think I just don't. I think it degrades my
Revolting. It revolts
experience.
you. Like you don't want to be
Yes,
around. That's okay. Like
yeah,
you can
yeah.
use that word.
But there is something about the 39 people in his guild agreed to use their time for his advantage in exchange for something in the real world. Right, but then in-game gold is, I feel like there's a separation there, but my brain is not able to make it. So I think you might have a point there.
So actually what I'm hearing from you is that the gold is less palatable for you than the money. And maybe that makes sense because like as a gamer who has some gold, your gold is now affected by this person doing this transaction, like inflation or whatever. But
Right.
with money, it sounded like you were less, like from scale of 1 to 10, you were really disgusted. You were probably like an 8 or a 9, sounded like, for
Like
the
a 10.
100,000 gold. But then it sounded like it was somewhat less for the money.
Yeah, and I think maybe you're onto something because the economy is actually affected in the game by the gold. If 39 people want to run one guy through a raid and get him geared, the in-game economy isn't necessarily affected. It might be in that, those 39 people may need certain gear or potions or whatever to run the raid effectively to carry another person, but they probably would have bought those things to run it themselves anyway. And so I guess there is something there that is more palatable when it's localized and not, affecting the economy at large, which I guess I feel like the gold transaction does.
Fascinating. And then if you don't mind answering then, because that was not what I was expecting at all. And thank you so much for popping me out of that little, like, what was the echo chamber that I was in. How do you feel about my 14-year-old niece decorating someone's house for some gold in Final Fantasy?
So I have no frame of reference for how you obtain what you decorate with in Final Fantasy or in any hypothetical game where you're decorating. But if the items in the home have to be earned in some way, and then you pay someone to decorate them in a way that is very appealing that you couldn't do yourself, that's lovely. But
So that's like a 0 on your disgust scale. That's like a negative.
if it's just the service of playing the game to improve my game in like a cosmetic appealing way, that's like a 1-to-1 player transaction, right? Like I could pay my brother to do something and that doesn't bother me so much as, yeah, I guess.
Oh, so it doesn't bother you when you're paying. So I'm fucking with you.
No.
Okay, that's actually fascinating. So it's not that people are like paying for the time. It's just whenever there is something that is like a wholesale detriment to the economy. So there's our answer, everybody. We just solved it. Make sure that when someone's real money trading or buying services, that it's actually like a benefit to the entire economy, and then no one will give a shit.
Mm.
You're welcome.
I'm trying to wrap my head around
who
that.
Who says we don't solve things on this podcast?
But anyway, thank you
one
for that, Reynolds. Like I didn't mean to grill you.
that.
That was really fascinating, actually. So I really appreciate your input as always.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to listen to this later and disagree with myself or something, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Candace psychologically manipulated you.
I feel abused. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'm going to take my leave.
Well, thanks for the question.
Yeah, a wise man once said, imagine not having Candace on your MMO development team.
It's true.
I think we just got back to the root of that.
I'll put it in your LinkedIn. What's that thing called? The endorsements. Yeah.
Clutch. Okay, I think we should probably wrap it up there. We're running a bit long. As usual, I would love to do more of this. If anybody knows any real life game economists at some point.
Oh, that would be awesome.
It would be neat to pick their brain and hear a bit about the process of setting something like this up, because seems incredibly smart, and I don't have any insight into it. But thanks for joining us again, and we will be back next Wednesday with a fresh topic. Until then, just leave notes, conversation all over the Discord as usual. And Chris?
Yep. Later, gamers. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.